Good evening and welcome to the 44th District Virtual Town Hall with your local lawmakers, Senator John Lovick, Representative April Berg, and Representative Brandy Donaghy. If you have a question, please type your comment on whatever platform you're using to watch this on this evening. And to get us started, here are your representatives with some opening remarks. Senator?
Hey, thank you very, very much, Guy. I'm Senator John Lovick. I'm glad to be here. Sorry about some of the technical difficulties. Most of those came from me. For some reason, I just couldn't connect properly. But we're here to hear you and to share what we have been doing. It's been a busy, I think, 38, 39 days in the 2022 legislative session. I'm very, very pleased to tell you that just yesterday, the state Senate passed a 2022 transportation package, and it's going to do a lot of things that I'm very, very pleased to say. We're going to touch every corner of the state with projects. So with that, I want to turn it over to my good friend, and I'm going to tell you right now, I am so honored to serve with Representatives Berg and Donaghy. So I'm going to turn it over to Representative Berg, and I know we're running a little bit late, so I'm going to make my remarks short, and I look forward to hearing any questions you might have. Representative Berg.
Thank you so much, Senator Lovick. And it is great to be here in this town hall with the amazing Senator John Lovick and the wonderful colleague, Representative Brandy Donaghy. I'm Rep. Berg, and I am so happy to be doing this town hall with the 44th tonight. We are doing amazing things in Olympia. And of course, I'm using Olympia in air quotes because we're kind of back and forth. But I am still happy to be serving as the Vice Chair of House Finance, as well as on the local government and education committees. I don't know about the folks out there watching, but I was told this short session was going to be not full of, too many of exciting things. But as Senator Lovick said, we have got some amazing things planned for transportation, as well as education, housing, the climate, and healthcare. So I'm excited to be doing this town hall tonight so that we can tell you some of the amazing things that we have going on in Olympia, serving you in the People's House. And I'll turn it over to Rep. Donaghy to introduce herself.
So hi, Brandy Donaghy. And actually, I had a couple of people now calling me Rep. Brandy, and it kind of works for me. So that's what I'm going to go with today. And I'm actually coming to you from Olympia. I've been down here because we do have some work happening on the actual House floor. And I've been one of those people out here or down here on the floor doing the work. And it has been really kind of amazing. I know that Senator Lovick mentioned how many days in we are. And I'll tell you, they just all kind of get all mixed up and twisted around because there's just so much work going on. This has been absolutely chaotic and amazing and beautiful. And we've got some great bills have gotten past the House, some great bills have gotten past the Senate, and we've got a lot more wonderful stuff to come. So really happy to be here. And please ask us any questions.
So I just have to say something. So I was called into action. I know my colleagues saw that when I left the House of Representatives, I was a Speaker Pro Tem presiding over a lot of the legislation. I had the gavel in my hand. I thought I would go over to the Senate, kick back, learn the process, and be like a pitcher waiting in the bullpen. But last week I was called and told to show up in Olympia with gavel in hand, because unfortunately our Lieutenant Governor, Denny Heck, came down with COVID. Mm-hmm. So they gave me the gavel and they said, you go out and run bills. And I was used to being called Mr. Speaker, and now they call me Mr. President. So I'm not a president, but it was a lot of fun presiding over the Senate floor. And I learned a lot in just a few days. So they always tell you in this business, we better always be ready. So thank you for that. And I look forward to any questions you might have.
Senator, if anybody was going to go over and take the Senate by storm, it was going to be you.
I was thinking the same thing. Senator Lovick with a gavel in his hand. It made me, when I saw that picture, I thought you were right at home, Senator Lovick.
It was great fun.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much, and thank you to everyone who is showing up for this virtual town hall in the 44th District. We're now going to go to questions, and there are some questions we got submitted ahead of time and some that we're taking live. If you want to ask a question, please type it on whatever platform you're using to watch this. The first question comes from Clarissa, who asks, could you talk a little about what is happening this session to support school districts who want to move to more sustainable buildings and purchasing practices? We want to see our schools go green, but it can be expensive.
Well, I will jump in on that one, kind of an education question and a climate question all in one, which are two of my favorite subjects. So I will tell you, Clarissa, it's a great question. We've had a lot of things happen in the last few years that have moved schools more towards green and green production and sustainable practices, especially as we're building new schools and wanting them to be LEED certified. That said, the best thing that we can do as a state to help our schools finance school construction is passing simple majority on bonds. And so we've come a step closer this session. And the bill actually is 1226. It actually moved from the House Education Committee. And I'm hoping to see that on the floor at some point. And to be frank, if we can get to a simple majority for bonds, letting communities raise their hand and say yes to school construction, that means that we can raise more money also for sustainable school construction. It all goes hand in hand. But another thing I wanted to talk about was just climate. And we do have some amazing climate policy coming out of the House, getting volleyed over to the Senate, where we can do things like more composting and less single-use plastics and things like that that seem big and holistic and affects multiple communities, but it will also affect our school communities by incentivizing good environmental climate-friendly practices. So thank you so much for that question.
And I just want to add to what Rep. Berg said. You know, climate change is real, and the things that we're doing, I believe, in the legislature this year are going to be great things that are going to help us address this climate change. And we're all being impacted by it. I mean, I'm a guy who experiences asthma, and I know what it's going to mean for me, but it's also going to mean quite a bit to our youngsters. I like, what do you call them? April, Rep. Berg, littles, or whatever the word you
I
use.
always call them kiddos.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really, really huge for us. So yeah, it's a great point. Thank you.
Yeah, and as we move forward, we really are going to be focusing on making sure all of our buildings, schools, housing, office buildings, everything are built with more sustainability in mind too. So that's a important space, but it does take time. And like Representative Berg said, it also takes funds, and we've got to get those levies passed. We've got to get those bonds passed in order to be able to do it.
Thank you so much for those answers. We're going to go now to a question from Sina, who asks, "What are your top legislative priorities this session?"
Well, I'll take that one, and I'm sure Rep. Donaghy will. You know, my priorities have always been the same. I've always focused on good, safe schools, good, safe roads, and good jobs with benefits. And that has just never changed. When we talk about good, safe schools, I'm talking about good, safe schools where our students not only are safe, but that they feel safe, where the teachers are safe and the faculty is safe, but also where we are paying our teachers well. And when I'm talking about roads, you know, the bill we passed yesterday, the transportation package, is going to it's going to help us have good, safe roads in our community. And it's also going to create jobs. So mine have always been the same since I've been in legislature. Good, safe schools, good, safe roads, and good jobs with benefits. Thank you for the question.
Absolutely. And I'll jump in too. And thank you, Senna, for the question. My priority this session has been pretty laser focused. And I'm talking about jobs, jobs, jobs. Our communities are not all recovering equitably. And so we do have places in our state in the 44th that are not recovering as fast as other places. And so two of the bills that I'm focusing on and really advocating for, one has to do with Community Economic Revitalization Board and giving them more money and more power to put shovel-ready projects in place in communities. So you always hear about, well, we want businesses to come and what can we do to entice more businesses to come and hire more folks? Well, we need to make properties shovel ready for business to come in and build the way they do. And so what my bill will do is allow the CURB board to actually give more money to communities via a grant program, and a lot of the money coming from the federal government to make shovel-ready sites. The other thing that I'm also advocating for are some of our data centers and making sure that communities have access to the jobs that come with putting data centers in rural, as well as we're looking at potentially some urban communities. And I know a lot of folks have feelings about that, but we're sitting here tonight because of a data center somewhere that's processing the data as we're talking to you. But the other piece of it too, priority for me, is education, like Senator Lovick said, because we do need to focus more on our paramount duty. It is our number one duty in this state. So I'm happy to be supporting legislation that actually looks at our prototypical school funding model and makes it more fair. And when I say by more fair, that means more adults in our schools, more counselors, more nurses, more social workers, more behavioral health specialists. We have to support our kiddos in our schools as well as the adults working there.
And another thing we're facing is we're in a housing crisis. So there are a lot of changes that need to be made and things we need to work on to make sure that we are making housing affordable and accessible for those who need it. And I mean, not just affordable housing that is, housing that is affordable, but also housing for those who are just barely managing to stay in their homes or who are having to travel for hours in order to be able to get to work because they can't work and live in the same place. It's a crisis that we cannot ignore. We have to be working on ways to make sure that we are supporting tenants, but also making sure that the landlords are still there in order to be able to provide that housing as well. So one of my top pieces is housing. Also making sure that we're building resiliency into everything we do so that we don't have to go back and pick up the pieces the next time something happens that throws us off course. Both of those things are going to be vital to our recovery and moving forward.
Thank you so much for those answers. If you're watching, this is a live virtual town hall with your 44th District lawmakers. Type a comment in whatever platform you're using to watch, Facebook, YouTube, anything, and you can ask a question of your lawmakers. We are now going to a question from Ben, who asks, what will adding 2 new judges to the county Superior Court do for our legal system?
I think that one is for me, Ben. Just a quick aside. Back in September, I received a great phone call from a judge by the name of Judge. Judge called and asked if I would sponsor a bill to add 2 new judges. Did I use the word judge enough? She
Right.
called and asked if I would sponsor a bill to add 2 new judges to Snohomish County. And what she pointed out to me was that we have almost 830,000 people in Snohomish County. Our judicial system is just overwhelmed. We have 15 judges. That's 1 judge for every 55,000 people in our county. King County has 55 judges, 1 for every 39,000. Pierce County has 23, 1 for every 39,000 people. And it's just going to add help with the backlog and help us access justice. There's an old saying, justice delayed is justice denied. We're probably denying a lot of justice in our community, in our county. And another thing that I always liked I spent almost 4 decades in law enforcement, and I would always hear the word that the court is the heart of civic engagement. Think about it that way. The court is the heart of civic engagement. This is the heart of our civic engagement by having courts that are functional, and it's going to give us 2 judges to allow people to have better access to justice. And I'm very, very pleased we passed the bill from the Senate. It's over in the House. So I'm looking at my 2 housemates saying,
Yes.
get that bill moving, because Judge is looking over my shoulders. And what it's going to mean better justice for all of us in this county of almost 830,000 people.
And thank you, Senator Lovick, for doing that bill. And I'm thanking you not just as a colleague, I'm thanking you also as someone who has a case. As you know, when I got into my car accident about a little over a year ago, it wasn't just happenstance. Someone actually hit us, and it was a felony. And that person still has not come to trial yet because of the backlog in our system. So I know there's a lot of folks out there watching tonight and a lot of folks in our district that are incredibly thankful for you to put forth that legislation. And now as your colleague, I'm going to say, thank you, thank you, thank you. I cannot wait to vote that off the House floor because it's much needed.
I don't know if Rep. Donaghy would like to say anything, but I just want to just really commend our judicial system here in the county. Those courthouses, those judges have been working, whether remotely or in person. They have done a fantastic job. I know all 15 of them. I've known them from the time that I was the sheriff. When I was a state trooper, I worked with some of them. When I was the county executive, I worked with them, and they do a fantastic job. But we need to give them some relief, and I'm glad that we're doing this.
Yeah, Senator, you said it. Everything that's to be said. It's about access. It's about making sure that we have enough judges to serve the population of the county that we have now, because it has grown. Yep. And it's also, it'll allow people to get their lives moving again for those who are waiting for cases.
Absolutely.
Because it just, regardless of the side you're on, it can be devastating and terrifying to have to wait so long to find out what's next. So this will help with that.
Yep.
Thank you all so much. We're going to go now to a question from Tom about the transportation package. He asks, we heard about the big transportation package. What will it do for the 44th?
Ren, do you want to take that? Since we passed it in the Senate, but I don't want to hog the mic here. I can tell you, if you want to take it up, Rep. Donaghy, I'll let you. I'll just tell you what I saw in the package that we worked on and that we passed. I'll just say this. We know we need $1.8 billion to replace the westbound Hewitt Avenue trestle. We're going to put $210 million there to start the project, to start the work, to do the design and all of those things. We're going to spend about almost $6 million in pedestrian safety. We're going to spend about $10 million in transit. It's going to be we're calling it a $16 billion 16-year package, but it's actually $17 billion. But we're going to get a lot of things in Snohomish County. And I can't go over every single one of them. A lot of them are just little projects, but most of those projects are going to be huge projects for us. But mainly, the main one is going to be starting design work on the westbound Hewitt Avenue trestle. We need more, but we have to start somewhere. And then it's going to be a package without a gas tax, which I think people are going to love.
Yeah, and it's a very atypical package because normally the transportation packages come out with a lot of highway work, and this isn't like that. There's a lot of focus on culverts, on walking paths, on biking paths, on multiple forms of transportation, not just the highways. And that's going to ensure that people in their communities can walk their communities safely, they can bike their communities safely, and we're not continuing to destroy the environment while we get from place to place, because that has to be a focus. And so this is really kind of a unique package, but it's also exciting because it's going to make some of the changes that we really need that are going to have a huge impact on our lives and make them better.
And a lot, I just want to say this, what I'm really pleased to see is we focused a lot on safe routes to schools. We're talking sidewalks in some communities. We're talking things like allowing kids to ride on buses and ferries free. Those are things that when all of this is rolled out, and again, when you're talking 16, and they keep saying 16, we're talking $17 billion. We're going to do a lot of things, and we will touch the 44th district in a lot of places.
And if I could just jump in there, because the two of my favorite words when we talk about transportation is hyphenated word, multimodal. And so this package is full of multimodal, different options for folks to get around. And just to highlight in the 44th, community transit will be able to expand their green line that a lot of our folks here use. It will actually be able to go all the way to Bothell, the Bothell campus for Cascadia and UW Bothell. And that is a huge benefit. It's going to really connect folks more via transit, via our Swift bus lines, not just with the green, but also, of course, our orange line that's coming in the 44th. And there's going to be a new silver line too. So it's got a lot of great things, but multimodal. So everybody out there who does not like to drive, there is something in this transportation package for you.
And I'll just say this about the transportation package. A lot of people are talking about electrification, and we're going to do a lot of those things with this new package. We're just, you could probably tell nothing gets me more excited than to see that we're doing great things, and we're just doing great things. And probably to me, the neatest thing is to have two seatmates that we work so very, very well together. We'll get things done together. So it's going to be fantastic.
Thank you all. To folks who are just joining us, we got a late start due to technical issues. This is a live virtual town hall with your 44th district lawmakers. If you have a question or a comment, please type it on whatever platform you're using and it'll show up and we can ask the lawmakers your question. We have now a question from Dave of Mill Creek. He says, I understand trying to help folks who lose their job and become homeless. What about people living in tents on sidewalks who won't take services and keep on breaking the law?
I don't want to be the first one. Rep. Donaghy, you want to hop in because I've been running my mouth too much, probably.
Oh no, you could never go too much. But I think this is a tough situation for a lot of people who are unhoused. They have a real distrust in our system because they have not been treated well by the system in the past, in many cases. So it's been my experience with the interactions I have had with our unhoused brothers and sisters that it's less of a refusal to accept services than a concern about what that will lead to, because we have not always done the best job for those people. Most people need some place to be. They need some place to be safe and warm. They need to know where their next meal is coming from. They need to know that if they step away for a moment, their belongings, the things that they treasure most in the world, will still be there when they get back. And our tendency is to interact with these communities in ways that challenge what their needs are. And so, first and foremost, we need to really, really recognize that we're not talking about others. We're talking about people. We're talking about people that we need to be treating as people, that we need to be honest with, and that we need to communicate with in order to identify what they need, because everybody understands best what they need. We should not be the ones deciding all the time. And when we can do that, and when we can provide wraparound services and actually pathways to becoming housed, people are more likely to trust us and work with us in order to get there. But sometimes we have a lot of work to do to rebuild faith in the system, to be able to really provide help, because for so long we keep saying we're going to do it and we keep throwing money at it, but it's not necessarily fixing the problem. So
I will just say this. There's probably not a tougher situation that we have to deal with. And I'm not talking about, when I say we, I'm not talking about just legislators. I'm talking about the community. We're looking at things like permanent supportive housing. I know the governor has an initiative that he really wants us to have more. And I know Rep. Donaghy talked about wraparound services. He's requested a lot in the budget to address this crisis. And how we're going to do it, we're not going to do it overnight. But what we're going to have to do is going to be one step at a time. I noticed just listening today, the mayor of Seattle, they're going into some of these homeless encampments and kind of not just necessarily breaking them up, but putting people in homes. I visited a new hotel that they purchased down at, I think it's 134th and Aurora. It was an old hotel, and now it's going to be a permanent housing for people with all of the services they need. Those are things that we're going to have to continue to do, because it's not just that they're out there. Some of them have needs that maybe we don't recognize. Some of them have behavioral health needs. And those are things that we are working. We're putting money in the budget for them. for some of these programs, and I'm hoping we will be successful with them.
And thank you for that, Senator Lovick and Rep. Donaghy, because I couldn't agree more. I think when we're talking about the folks in our communities that are homeless, the biggest thing that we can do is to not have folks lose jobs and to not become homeless in the first place. So I am excited about a lot of the different programs in terms of jobs as well as apprenticeships that we're looking at this session. But also, I had an opportunity in the interim to go tour the pallet shelter facility in Everett, right here in our backyard in the 38th. It's an amazing facility that's working with communities across this country, actually, to provide sustainable and temporary, but they feel very permanent pallet shelter homes. And it's an amazing solution to get folks off of the streets and into some place that feels dignified and warm and where they can access support services. But I think the bigger piece of it is helping folks where they are. And so the differences that we're making in behavioral health services, access to care, access to treatment, and access to jobs. And I can't say that enough. We've got to get folks working in living wage jobs so they can keep their homes and they can keep their communities, because that's the best way to tackle this problem, is for folks to not end up homeless to begin with.
And I'll just say this, I visited, and I know Rep. Berg and Rep. Donaghy have visited these facilities. I visited Compass Health, the new facility that they're building. I think it's 38th and like 38th and Broadway. They're doing a lot of good things in the community. But again, we have to do this with some humanity and realize that it's not just them. It could be any of us. So that's my focus on making sure that we try and provide a level of service that they will need in the community.
Thank you all. We have a question now. Mary from Everett asks, what is happening with education this year, especially for kids who are struggling during the pandemic?
Yeah, and Rep. Donaghy, do you want to talk about your bill maybe, and then I can jump in too?
Sure. I have a bill that is focused on standardizing para-education training, and there's a couple reasons for this. One is because sometimes paraeducators aren't getting the training they need in the time that they need, and it makes it difficult for them to do their job, and we can lose them. And these are people who are hands-on with our kids all day, every day. We trust them with our most precious resource, our children, and we need to make sure that they're actually getting the education that they need. So that bill to standardize that education has passed the House, and it's in the Senate. So hopefully it'll move there too. But that is one important piece that I think we need to be doing. We need to be making sure that we have the resources necessary for those people who are working with our children in the schools to be able to do their job effectively.
Yeah, and I think that, and I'm so happy that you sponsored a bill for paraeducators, because I think a lot of what we're doing for our kids, or trying to do for our kids, is to get more adults in the classroom to help bridge those education gaps. Those, I hate to say that that any of our students are behind, because I really feel like everybody's in that same situation. All of our students had this completely this horrific incident, having this public health crisis kind of derail some of their educational plans and some of their educational progress. And so as we're looking at educational outcomes, we have to be mindful of that, and not to overly burden our students with saying, oh, you're behind, and oh, you got to rush to get ahead. No, you've got to maintain progress. You've got to keep making progress in reading, in math, in the sciences, and the arts. And so what we can do as a state is help with funding. And so what I've been very happy to support are funding around, again, behavioral health specialists, nurses, counselors, social services, but also around keeping our schools whole in terms of the allocation and the formulas that we use to fund schools. And so if they've got the money to provide the services, that's what our schools are doing. And so I'll tell you, in Everett, one of the things that we did that was very successful last summer was free summer school. We had an amazing amount of families take advantage of that. And I know districts across the state did the same thing. So hopefully we'll keep doing innovative things like that with the funding that the state provides, as well as the federal government.
Thank you so much. If you're listening or watching, this is a live virtual town hall with your 44th district lawmakers. Type your question or comment in the comment box of whatever platform you're watching this on, whether it's Facebook or YouTube or something that got invented last week. We now have a question from Tiffany of Snohomish, who asks, are lawmakers doing anything about giant hospital bills, especially ones that are a surprise you get 5 months later?
Yes.
Berg, it looked like you lit up for that one.
I did, because Tiffany, yes, we are. Because I think everybody, that's representing you here tonight can empathize with what you're saying. And so House Bill 1688 from the amazing Rep. Cody does just that. That's going to give families peace of mind that they won't have a surprise bill months later after an ER visit or another doctor's visit. And so the answer, quick and easy, yes, we are doing something about that.
And I'll just say this, I know what those surprise bills are like. I went down on, I believe, January 5th to do a COVID test at a clinic here, thinking I'll just slip in there and they'll bill Kaiser. Well, they billed me $600, and I'm not a rich man, but just to get a $600 bill, luckily Kaiser took care of some. So I know what it feels like to have those things happen. If I went in just for a COVID test, it took all of 10 minutes and I get a bill for $688. So, I'm glad Rep. Cody, and I miss seeing her, but I'm glad Rep. Cody is doing something about that, and we're going to address this issue. Can't wait to get it over to the Senate so I can vote yes on it.
Thank you both. We now have a question live from YouTube. I'm going to put on the screen to you. It's about electric vehicle rebates. And I think the person's name is a nickname, but you can see the question. They're wondering about the bill that includes the request by Governor Inslee about rebates for the purchase of EVs and whether you support it.
I had an opportunity to tour. I had to be September of this year. I had an opportunity to tour an EV. They had an EV show right on 132nd and 42nd. There's a church there. And I was quite impressed with the electric vehicles. So, yes, I will support it. Now, I can't remember exactly where it is right now. I'm not sure. I haven't seen it in any of the legislation we've passed, and I don't know if you guys have something over in the House that's addressing it, but I haven't seen a bill in the Senate to my knowledge. Do you guys know?
Yeah, we do have an EV bill, and I'd have to look up to see where it ended up. But so I'll tell you, I'm an absolute supporter of EV and EV rebates, and I do support the governor's request for that $7,500 additional rebate. What I am going to put a big asterisk, because I want to make sure the bill addresses it, and I believe just off the top of my head that it does, is that we really have to talk about affordability. And so what we want to make sure we're not doing is unintentionally giving folks a rebate on something that maybe they were going to do anyway. Maybe they were going to buy a high-priced car. I want to make sure our families, our working families, have access to choices and cars and EV in a way that's meaningful. And so that $7,500, I want to make sure it's really going towards families that maybe don't have as many choices as other ones at higher incomes. So yeah, I do support it, but I want to make sure it's affordable and accessible to all of our working families out there.
Yeah, and I would agree with Rep. Berg. Marginalized communities, you're not going to see a lot of EVs in those communities. So we need to make sure that there's a balance here.
Yes.
And I'm not sure. I have a lot of bills to read and have a lot of things to look at. And this is not one that, until it comes up to where I'm addressing it, I haven't given it a lot of thought, but I don't know where it is right now.
Thank you both. We now have a question from Tyler of Mill Creek, who asks, how can we do a better job preparing for pandemics and disasters like COVID, the Cascadia earthquake, or if Mount Rainier ever decides to go off?
Oh, I guess that one's tailor-made for me because I've had to handle probably just about every emergency in the world. There's a great quote by President Eisenhower where he said, "Plans are nothing, but planning is everything." As a matter of fact, one of his great quotes was, he said, in an emergency, you should, if you have an emergency, you should take all of the plans off the top shelf and just throw them right out the window. He said, but you should be planning. So one of the things that I did after, when we went into this crisis, I drafted a bill to create a statewide pandemic preparation and response task force. We put $500,000 in there to really do a look back to tell us how we handled the pandemic, what went right, what went wrong, and what we must do better. And it's also going to help us with other disasters we might have. I was a county executive when the Oso mudslide hit, killing 42 people and injuring 10 people. And I noticed that we were prepared. We did a great job. Over 125 agencies showed up in Snohomish County. They were prepared. They knew what to do. They knew how to respond. Those are the things that I'm hoping that as we add more money to this task force, the pandemic response task force, it'll tell us how we responded to this. Because we're going to have more disasters. We're going to have more tragedies. It's how are we prepared for them? Like Eisenhower said, plans are nothing, but planning is everything. We should be planning every single day for the next disaster. And that's what we're doing with the task force that we have put together.
And there are other things that you can do if you're thinking about a community thing or just in general, the government. We need to think about where we're cutting down trees, where we're building, how the impact we are having on our environment is going to change our environment. Because
Absolutely.
if we don't have, like in a lot of cases, hills are we help keep hills steady. We don't, but trees help keep hills steady. So we cut down all the trees. There's nothing really holding them in place because the roots are part of what helps keep them stable. We have floods sometimes because we have shifted things in such a way that the water has nowhere to go. Or typically it would be in an area that has a lot of greenery and the greenery is gone and now it's a parking lot. So that water has nowhere to go and those can cause floods. So we want to be careful. On an individual basis, think about where you are and what challenges you'll face, right? Make sure that you understand what the impacts of disasters that are common to your area will be. And then I know there's nothing we can really do to be totally planning out, totally ready. You can never have that happen. But what you can do is you can make sure you've got a go bag. You can make sure you've got copies of your prescriptions. You can make sure that you have extra water or a place to store extra water, extra food. Because if we do have a major disaster, we could be looking at 2 weeks before we have help. And this is in part because of our geography. It's amazing. We've got all these hills and these rivers and everything, and it's beautiful, but rivers means bridges. And if we have a major earthquake and the bridges go down, how are you going to get to the other side? So there are a lot of resources out there, from disaster management departments to the Red Cross, where you can look on their websites and just get an idea as to things you need to do to plan for yourself and for your family to be prepared. But we have to be doing that too, and thinking about how what we're doing changes our environment in such a way to prevent exacerbating those issues.
Yeah, and I'm so thankful for Senator Lovick and his forethought in the bill, and thank you for Rep. Donaghy and all your work with the Red Cross and different disaster preparedness. I will just say that as we talk through this particular one, this public health crisis, one of the mantras that I've used is that we have to come out of it better than we went in. So with COVID, it really did highlight so many areas where we just weren't doing a good enough job as a state and even as local governments. And so I think for me, looking at this and looking at, goodness forbid, any other disasters, what can we do better? So out of OSO came some really creative ways to structure and finance manufacturing in areas to get them going. And that one little project that came because of OSO now got put to a statewide level. That was something good that came out of that horrific disaster. When I look at COVID and I look at even having an event like this, a town hall, and some of the different technology advancements that we've been able to implement in things like schools and even at our state legislature, so that we can hear from more folks like you can now testify on committees virtually. You can now do a school meeting with your schools, with your students' teacher virtually. So I do like to look for some of the positives that come out of some just horrific tragedies. And so as we move forward, we will be better and more resilient with the next tragedy.
I just have to add one more thing. during my time in public service, I actually went to the Mount St. Helens eruption when it erupted, and then the one here, and of course COVID. And I am seeing a lot of great work on the part of, people talk about government. We don't, sometimes people get upset with it, but when we want it, it's there. And what I have found is that our government, our people, our community is there when we need them. And the community engages in the things that we need. I remember when I was at OSO, yes, we did a lot of great things, a lot of government agencies, but the community participated quite a bit and helped us recover from that disaster. So it's all of us working together that's going to make a huge difference.
Thank you all for those answers and for that question. We now have a question from Skyla, who asks, what are you doing this session on climate change and protecting our environment?
So much.
I was going to say I can jump in because Skyla, that's a great question. And I think when you look at, I know for the House Democrats, we really focused on 4 key areas this session. And one of those key areas was the climate crisis. Because, at this point, I think we all can agree on climate change, and being climate focused, but we have to really acknowledge that we're now at a crisis point. So a couple of things that we're doing that are, I think, beneficial for the climate. We have a great bill by Rep. Fitzgibbon that really establishes appliance efficiency standards, right? So these are ones that making sure our appliances are more efficient. We also have a great bill from Rep. Doer right there in the first, who's talking about new technologies to harness sources for clean and safe and renewable energy that comes locally from right here in our state. So that's going to give us an ability to really focus and limit greenhouse gas pollution production. And it's also going to do the thing that I said I want to focus on, create jobs. We cannot forget about the blue-green connection. And I'm talking about jobs and its connection to climate-friendly proposals.
Thank you for that answer. If you're listening, type your question or comment in the comment box of whatever platform you're watching, Facebook or YouTube, and we will ask your local lawmakers that question. We now have one that is from YouTube, from William. I'm going to show it on the screen. He's asking about the end of Omicron and COVID. And he's asking, I believe, the transition out of the mask mandates and the other restrictions.
The governor is going to have a press conference tomorrow to be speaking about next steps. And honestly, that's when we'll know too what those next steps are, I think.
So yeah, and William, that's a great question. And I think what we've seen even today, King County came out and it looks like they are going to stop requesting vaccine verification as you enter into some of their indoor spaces. We've also seen from the superintendent of public education, Chris Reichdahl, came out and asked that every school district locally can work with their health officials to follow the science and do what's right in terms of mask mandates. And I'm just going to say, I agree with that approach. I think that we are at a point where we can actually be looking at a post-Omicron, and I won't say post-COVID because I've said that too many times. I'm touching wood as I speak right now. I know we're going to come out of this, but I just don't want to put any dates on as to when. But I think we are getting post-Omicron so that we can go back to some semblance of normalcy when it comes to masking and other different mandates in our communities. But I do think, again, for the school piece of it, I would love to see our local districts be able to work with their local health authorities to make the right decisions for students.
Yeah, I agree with everything the rep said. It's just going to come down to follow the science, and they're getting a lot of information, obviously, faster than we're getting it. And I trust the science. I trust what our governor and what the experts will tell us. So that's what I'm waiting for.
Thank you all for that answer. We now have a question live from YouTube that I will put on the screen. It's from Stephanie about police reform bills, and I will let you see it and read it.
I like this fancy technology. Can I just say that for everybody watching at home? We haven't had the questions being put up there. And I know Rep. Lovick is going to jump in on this, but
Yeah.
I just want to give my 2 cents first. So we did have a bill that passed the House, I think it was 2037, that talked about some of the reforms. And really, I consider it kind of a trailer bill to the police reforms that we did last session, to make things more clear, to make it so that both community as well as our law enforcement folks really understood the intent behind some of the reforms that we made last session. That said, I'll be super transparent in that a lot of folks in the community really were vocal that they weren't happy with some of the different iterations of that bill. And I say that because legislating is an iterative process. So what did end up coming out of the House on this particular thing was something that that took community's voice and concern into consideration. So I voted for it. I was pleased to. I think that it's going to help both communities as well as law enforcement as they continue to reform practices. It's about keeping communities safe and holding folks accountable when they're not doing the right thing in that realm. So I'll hand it over to Senator Lovick on that. But I will say that I did vote for 2037 coming out of the House.
Yeah, and I look forward to voting for 2030, the bill, when it's in the Senate. I started reading it today, and we passed a bill. The bill is Senate Bill 5919, if I have my numbers correct. And what I want to tell Stephanie is this. Anytime we pass major legislation, it's not unusual to come back and do some tweaks on it. You know, when we passed the major reform legislation in 2021, I went out into the community, and there were uncertainties, and we had to make sure that we corrected the things that the police officers, the police chiefs, the sheriffs were telling us that were problem areas. And they talked about things like pursuits. They talked about things like the Involuntary Treatment Act. They talked about things like the use of force. So we've made the adjustments. And that's not to say that we're not going to come back next year. I spoke with the police agency today, and because most of the police departments were talking about giving them the ability to have some policies in place for pursuits. And I tell all of the police all the police officers that I run across, I'm not a big fan of pursuits. I was a trooper for 31 years. I was never a big fan of pursuits, but we have to give them the ability to do some of the things that they feel they need to do. So those were some of the tweaks we made in the legislation. And is everybody going to be happy? Absolutely not. What I tell people is this: we can't all agree on everything, but we all agree on the fact that community safety has to be our top priority. And we think that the bills that we're passing now, the bills that we're working on, are going to give our police officers, our firefighters, and our emergency responders a better opportunity to provide better community safety for us.
Thank you so much for those questions and those answers. That is about all the time we have this evening. If you still have a question or you didn't get an answer and there wasn't time, please contact your lawmakers' offices. There'll be contact information at the end of this. And now I'm going to turn this back over to the lawmakers for closing remarks. Thank you so much.
I'll be the last to close since I opened first. How's that? I'll yield to my wonderful seatmates.
Well, thank you, Senator Lovick. And I will just say thank everyone for being here tonight. It's been wonderful to talk with you and to share a little bit of what we're doing in Olympia. I will say I hope the next time we're able to talk to community will be in community and that it will be safe, and because I am looking forward to a post-mandate future. That said, you know, being in the House is a team sport. And I got to say, we've got the best team right here in the 44th. And Senator Lovick, I am so excited that you are our senator and that you, I think the Senate's a team sport now that they have you. And I'm just going to keep saying team sport because I think when you close, you're going to talk about some sporting things. But that said, I want to highlight something that I'm working on because it is a team sport. It's a bill that doesn't have my name at the top, but I tell you, it's a passion point for me. And that's talking about data privacy. And so Bill 1850, which will be hopefully volleyed over to the good senator at some point, is working its way through the House. But it does something really unique about data privacy in the state, which is it starts a commission whose entire job and mission will be to work on and enforce data privacy rights for the consumers in this state. So I'm just giving everybody a teaser about that one. It's a big one. I've done an op-ed on it. It is a team sport. It'll be getting over there to the Senate pretty soon. But I just want folks to be aware that we're looking at all of the aspects to to make life stronger for the folks in this state. So your economy, education, healthcare, housing, transportation, and data privacy. I'll hand it over to Rep. Donaghy with this.
Yeah, and just what April said, everything that we're doing, every step that we're taking, every bill that we're passing is all about making everybody's lives better, making letting us be stronger, more resilient, and able to take deep, fresh breaths. So I am really happy to have had the opportunity to be here. I'm more than happy to answer any other questions anybody may have. Feel free to reach out to my office. And yeah, this is a lot. There's a lot of work that goes on. There are a lot of rules to follow, but it's also really amazing to be able to have the opportunity to serve. And I am so thankful to be able to do so with such a team.
And thank you, Rep. Donaghy and Rep. Berg. Rep. Berg talked about a team sport. I just want to leave everybody with a quote from Admiral Barnett. He was the Region Commander of Pacific Area Northwest. And he said, when we're dealing with a pandemic, he said, we can live in a cave or a cocoon. His preference was to live in a cocoon. He said, because when you're in a cocoon, you're going to come out vibrant, energized, and ready to go. What's going to help us come out of this vibrant, energized, and ready to go is to keep doing what we're doing, work together as a community. And I have a little bill that I sponsored that I talk about every day. And sometimes we do a lot of serious stuff. And this is one of those fun things we did. It was the first bill that I passed in the state Senate. It's a bill to make pickleball, and everybody gets excited, to make pickleball the state sport. All but one member voted for it. It's over in the House now. And the reason I say pickleball is we can all get outside. When we take these masks off, we can all get outside, have fun, play pickleball, and do fun things. We can live in a cave or a cocoon. And since we have to be inside, let's make it a cocoon so that when we come out of it, we're going to come out of it vibrant, energized, and ready to go. And an evening like this has made me so energized. I frankly can't wait. I'm at home now, but I can't wait to get back to Olympia the next few days and do the good things that we are privileged and honored to do, working in the legislature to serve all of you. Thank all of you for what you do. Thank you for supporting us, and we will do everything we can to support you. Thank you very, very much.
That is all the time we have tonight. Thank you so much to everyone who took part in this and asked questions or just watched. And thank you to all three of our lawmakers from the 44th District. Have a good evening.